Now that I've got that out of my system, please, ladies and gentlemen, mostly kids, please take it from me as a cautionary tale of sorts. Please be glad that maybe you weren't there when the Raimi trilogy was being released. Don't be corrupted by these rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia, because then you're going to be forking over a whopping $30 to $35 depending on where you manage to pick this guy up, whether it be through Amazon, and that's probably your cheapest option, to maybe the most expensive option in the form of, I think it's either Entertainment Earth or maybe Big Bad Toy Store. They're offering it for like $35 to $37, and it's goddamn ridiculous at that point. And then sandwiched somewhere in between will probably be your retail stores like GameStop, Walmart, Target maybe. I don't know, whatever the case may be, but there's some sort of vice grip that something like the black-suited Spider-Man from Spider-Man 3 has on the people who witnessed it firsthand back in theaters in 2007. Some of which even managed to witness it in IMAX screens. Yes, I'm obviously talking about myself here. But at least some of us managed to grow up and actually become content creators. It's actually in 2007 when I decided to pick up a video camera and taught myself how to do Transformer reviews, because at the time Transformers took off later in the summer of 2007, specifically July, and I started to see other people's Transformer reviews. That's kind of what kickstarted the whole shebang. And to have it come full circle here, but with very tragic results in the form of Hasbro semi going back to their roots, doing away with what they originally did in the 5.5-inch scale when they took the rights from Toy Biz to then divulge into their wave of Spider-Man 3 figures in 2007, only to now harken it back to the black-suited Spidey here through their much more contemporary renditions, their technologies, their practices, all to simply give us a goddamn repaint of the No Way Home book. It's the same thing. It's the No Way Home body, except now black with, of course, the silver webbing touches. So, David, why exactly did you become a bit of a hypocrite and fork over that money? Because I at least want this video to be a form of vessel, to be at least a form of conduit for certain folks that maybe had a pre-order lockdown through their fan channel of choice. Look at this review and go, yeah, I think I'm good. Especially with what's going on right now in the world as far as tariffs, as far as increment prices, as far as things that are going down with the shippings of different retailers, of different manufacturers, all the different factors that make people kind of take priority. And even I was kind of going back and forth, but realizing that this guy was actually floating about in my area, I was like, could I be wrong? Could maybe something be done from the time that those renders were revealed during the Hasbro Pulse stream till now? Was there maybe some kind of modification, some kind of change, something to maybe at least temper my fears and really break through my expectations and make me realize, you know what, I got this guy wrong? No. If anything, I was just given much more credence to my original belief. It is, in fact, mine and plenty of other collectors and an awful lot of commentators within the Hasbro Marvel Legends space that, yeah, this is exactly what we feared. It's simply just the No Way Home body sculpt utilized here for what is supposed to be a much younger 2007 Tobey Maguire, who I believe... Sure, we can take his real-life age into account, but here, I actually want to kind of jump into the fictional realm of the Sam Raimi trilogy and think to ourselves that this is supposed to be technically a early to mid-20s Peter Parker, because we have to remember, as unrealistic as it's portrayed, that Peter from Spider-Man 1 was graduating high school and barely going to his first year of college. So we're led to assume that he's either 18 or 19 at the latest. So by the time we get to Spider-Man 3, he's supposed to be in his early to mid-20s. And to utilize the body that was used for what's supposed to be a middle-aged Tobey Maguire semi-retired Peter Parker from No Way Home, it kind of made sense over there. Here, though, it's the same book, and it just does not translate because you're seeing all the same problems and things, the hindrances that we were already kind of dealing with that original buck, only here this time, of course, coated in a completely jet black, smoky black with the silver touchings of the webbing all over the suit. Of course, any part that's pretty much webbed up is now glistening with this chrome paint, from the boots to the gloves to the sleeves, the chest, and then of course the belt that's kind of looping towards the back. And even going back to the original design of the black suit from Spider-Man 3, it kind of made sense for that version of the character, for that lived-in world where you're going from the style of that suit that already had a very embossed feel to the webbing. It kind of, had this reflection to the webbing, which is often why whenever there's like marketing material or anything like that, portraying the Tobey Maguire suit, he often has, like, when it comes to figures in particular, the webbing is always done in a reflective style as opposed to just straightforward black in the case of either Andrew Garfield or Tom Holland. So here it makes sense for them to go with those methods, those practices to make it kind of pop a little bit more and be a little bit more cohesive to that take for the Tobey Maguire suit in black this time for Spider-Man 3. But then we get into probably the biggest problem, is that they are utilizing that No Way Home body, which again, outside of just the problem of it being modeled after a much slimmer down and not so fit Tobey Maguire, or at least not as fit as he was when he was younger, because obviously he's going to be yoked up, especially after wearing the Spider-Man 3 suit. He's meant to be amplified. He's supposed to be have a broader physique, a much more tighter physique as far as the muscles. He even flexes at one point to say, "Oh, this feels good. This is something else." To demonstrate, of course, we're going to have the original right here. You could see it's pretty much beat for beat the exact same body sculpt. And we all, like I said, had an assumption that this is exactly what was going to happen, except that maybe, considering that the majority of the promo material for this guy when the pre-orders went live were mainly 3D renders, only to now realize that even in three-dimensional format, after finally being printed and manufactured, yeah, it's the exact same damn thing. Even down to that cutaway that we have with that neck piece that's designed to kind of release a little bit of air to make sure that removing the head and kind of moving the head about is at least a little alleviated with pressure that's cooked up inside. But still, it just leads to this separation of the neck joint that ever so often kind of it puts the fear of God in me that it's going to break apart. And other than that, like I said, everything else is straightforward, the exact same thing as the No Way Home body, which, like I said, I'm willing to suspend just a little bit of disbelief for this guy since he's meant to be a semi-retired, much older Peter Parker. Not for this guy. You guys really couldn't have bought... Who am I kidding? This is Hasbro we're talking about. And apart from the very obvious difference of the red and blue being swapped out for predominantly jet black with the silver accents for the webbing, and as far as everything else that's kind of touched up to be presentable, would have to be, in my opinion, one of my favorite things about the suit from Spider-Man 3, not just here in Marvel Legends format, but also pretty much any iteration that was released from back in the day, as far as costumes, as far as merchandising material, is got to be that elongated-legged version of the symbol on the front and on the back, which definitely did get overhauled here, and it's an actual sculpted, printed piece on top of the plastic, so at least I give them just a teensy bit of credit for overhauling the symbol on the front and on the back and not being coated black, but also being congruent with the rest of the silver webbing. And again, it's overhauled to mimic that of the original version from the 2007 movie. But then quickly and surely, we're brought back to reality via that head sculpt, which is just as terrible as it was on the original release. And here, we have the black with the jet gray or jet black, smoky black texture, as well as the silver accents, coming back to bite me in the ass. Because originally, we had this version that at least managed to kind of hide a little bit of the deformity or deformative look to the head sculpt as far as how egg-shaped and separated the eyes are versus the way where the mouth is placed, because of the red that is then able to clash very well with the black rims of the Oakley lenses. Whereas over here, it's all mushed together because of the black, the silver, and a little bit of the white within the lenses. And even the lenses themselves don't have the black. They're actually coated and rimmed around with the same silver that's utilized for the webbing. And if anything, I don't know if maybe it's just me. My eyes are broken. I don't know what it is, but it looks worse than even the red one. The red one, at least, like it's able, it's kind of, like I said, mask it, no pun intended, because of the red and the silver and black and white. You know, there's enough of a color clash to hide it away somewhat. I don't know why it is over here, but he looks much more Spooderman than the original red and blue did. And naturally, since it's the exact same bodies, exact same pretty much everything, the articulation is going to be ideally the same. In fact, so identical that I frankly don't feel the need to call out every single joint. Just know that it moves pretty much as much... frankly, frequently in the exact same joints, in the exact same points of articulation as they did originally. Now, granted, to be completely fair across the board, the articulation in and of itself does feel nice. It's actually ratcheted in certain parts, specifically around those very egregious looking top arm joints. Despite my feelings about the way that those shoulder plates are felt, that butterfly mobility is nowhere to be found. The shoulder joint is baked in there. The butterfly joint is in there, but it just nudges. It doesn't really move. What, am I going to have to, look for some kind of definitive maximum Tobey Maguire Spidey to get that form of articulation? At the rate that we're going, I think that's pretty much what's going to be found there. But at least you have a really solid build to the rest of the articulation as far as the mid-torso joint that's also ratcheted and on a bit of a swivel there that is able to crunch in every kind of direction. The upside-down hinge joint for the waist, though I would have liked some rotation there. But the legs, despite being assembled to the main torso of the body at the top part of the leg there, looking very off and protruding, it's at least pretty solid to be able to move up and down. The thigh swivels, the knee joints, all pinless. They're pretty robust, and like I said, there's at least a good amount of really well quality tooling to at least have it hold in certain positions. Again, there's just an awful lot of things that are either widespread across Marvel Legends that I'm not the biggest fan of, as far as, like I said, the ankle joints and having to rely on certain swivel parts, or just certain things that, again, are just assembled very strangely for certain characters that are supposed to be a little bit more on the athletic side, like Spidey here. And those initial qualms that I had with the Tobey Maguire body that was made for No Way Home are replicated here. I memean, Jesus, look at that. They look like 5-year-old kids at a birthday party. But at least I'll count just a few minor blessings where they're placed. And that would have to be that not everything was replicated one-to-one, because the one original problem that I did have with the No Way Home Spidey here was that he barely came with any hand accessories. Not only did he come with asymmetrical hands, one fist and one, I guess, what appears to be the wall-crawling hand on the left, but then on the side he comes with web-shooting hands, and that's frankly about it as far as specific hand accessories. Whereas with the black suited, they at least managed to be a little bit more generous. Did it touch just a few more extra scraps? Because this time you'll notice that he does have symmetrical fisted hands on both there, but he also comes with open, seemingly wall-crawling hands. This one will appear to be a bit familiar because it is in fact the left hand that he had over here, only this time it's separated, and then on the right they did manage to include another wall-crawling hand for the right. So now we got semi-symmetrical, because despite being open and kind of alluding to him wall-crawling, I did notice that the right one is a bit more relaxed and extended, whereas this one's kind of clenching a bit. So they have different gestures, though I do kind of prefer that. It adds a little bit of personality. And then naturally, since he came with web shooting on the original, he's going to come with a third pair of web shooting black coated hands right there. So a total of 6 hands that at least gives us a few more permutations that this original guy did. The only other inclusion that is a little bit on the strange side would have to be this Venom / symbiotic piece that can strap onto one of his shoulders, as you can kind of see the little loops right here that then cater to one side of his shoulder, predominantly the left one, to make it look like it's talking to him, or it's kind of covering on over him. However, this specific piece has come under some scrutiny from the Marvel Legends community, since despite looking kind of standard and generic for any kind of symbiote piece that's pretty much tied to any version of the black suited Spidey, is it just me, or if you look a little carefully, you'll notice that this is not, and again, I know that some people have probably already repeated this, but there's a very good chance that Sony is just oh so petty with certain visual discrepancies of certain versions of their characters that they don't even want to at least let a little bit of reprieve with certain takes. Effectively, what I'm trying to say here is that if you look closely, you can kind of tell from not only the shade of black, but even the actual design and overall look of the eyes here on the symbiote piece, that this is what appears to be the symbiote from the Tom Hardy Venom films, and not so much the symbiote that we saw sporadically throughout the third Sam Raimi movie, because that one had like much more angled looking eyes. It looked more like he was frowning. And then on top of that, the other major comparison that people have been making with this specific piece, it's pretty much mimicking the exact same design as a symbiote piece that's going to be included inside of the black suited Spidey from Hot Toys. So it's almost a little strange that they look damn near identical. And just like people are saying that this is probably taken from the Tom Hardy version of Venom, that symbiote piece inside of the Hot Toys is also looking like it's being taken from the Tom Hardy Venom as opposed to Spider-Man 3 Venom. So and that's why I was kind of going back to, taking a jab at Sony, because it really does feel like they said, oh yeah, you can use the symbiote, but it has to be the symbiote from the Tom Hardy movies, not Spider-Man 3. No, that's locked away in the vault. And I'm like, why? Why can't we do that? Why can't we have that? I mean, have any of us questioned as to why it is that we got this guy, but we have yet to get a Venom figure in the scale with proper contemporary Marvel Legends practices, as far as like I said, that specific shade of black / kind of purplish black, that specific design of the suit with the much beefier body. Why haven't we gotten that? And more so, why haven't we gotten some kind of Hot Toys figure in the 1/6 scale, or Figure Arts or Mafex, etc.? I'm thinking that they got it probably locked good and tight in some kind of licensing vault, and that's probably why we're dealing with a piece such as this. And then on top of that, we got some major QC problems as far as the paint apps on the eyes right here. You can blatantly see via a close-up that we got some splotchiness happening there. So there's very little as far as what I'm really going to be able to do with this piece, and frankly, I would have taken something else on the side here. You could almost argue that piece was probably tossed in to justify the $30 to $35 price tag across different retailers, which is a shame because the next accessory and final accessory that I've been saving up until this point is probably the only real accessory that truly makes this reissue, reiteration, or re-release, whatever you want to call it, almost worth it. Almost. And that's, of course, the unmasked Peter Parker, Bully Maguire, Tobey Maguire head right there. And yeah, judging from those initial promo pics, I did think to myself, did they just take the original No Way Home sculpt from that movie version and then just kind of overhaul the hair, remove the hairpiece entirely, coated it in black, and gave us the emo haircut, and then called it a day? But I'm actually surprised that, to give him a little bit of extra credit, they did change up a little bit of the expression to make him look a bit more aggressive. The actual likeness is still a little bit questionable as far as slightly resembling Tobey Maguire and still having at least a much decent interpretation that they can only do so with their technology these days, as far as, like I said, the ink jetting and whatever is that they're going on over there with. And sure, it still leaves a little bit to be desired, but at least from far away, you can still tell that, yeah, that's meant to be a little bit more so closer to Tobey Maguire than anything else. Again, it's still not perfect. I feel like if you're going for something that's just a little bit closer as far as accuracy, you're probably you're best betting on either Mafex or ASH Figure Arts. And between those two, I would probably say that Mafex probably takes the cake. But at least I give him some credit in overhauling, like I said, the hair to make it look a little bit more emo and droopy. At first, I wasn't sure how I was feeling about it being really, really jet black as opposed to the brown. But if you do go back and watch the movie, it did kind of become a little black as the movie went along and he wore the suit more and more. It did look like it was changing color. At first, I thought it was mainly just appearing wet, and that's why it looked kind of blackish. It was still holding on to a little bit of brown, but no, it actually pretty much turned straight forward black. So yeah, that's actually technically accurate. And I'll be damned, if you look a little closely, yep, they did in fact added the eyeliner. It's very minuscule, but if you get your eyes up in there, yeah, there's a little. And then look back to the original Tobey from the 2021 release. He's got the eyeliner. It's in there. I'll be damned. They managed to get that across. The only thing they didn't do that I think probably would have made him work wonders and probably would have detracted from the, like I said, the nefarious intentions of just using the same body from the retired Peter on over here would be to then overhaul a little bit of the quote-unquote sagginess to the head, or rather to the face. That way he looks a bit younger because, again, we're dealing with what's supposed to be a mid to late 20s Peter Parker, early to mid 30s, almost late 30s Tobey Maguire. So he's supposed to look younger, and here you can tell that, yeah, they effectively just took the same sculpt and they just changed the expression, added the eyeliner, and overhauled the hair. And at the end of the day, despite getting the hair accurate, it does add a little bit of volume to the top and the back to the point where it makes it look just a teensy bit oversized. And to prove my point, there you go. You can see that, yeah, the head is looking just a little bit more bulbous. I'm not saying that it didn't with the original, but it's just exponentially looking a bit more top heavy. And for the sake of posterity, I added the little symbiote piece to kind of show exactly how it's supposed to be mounted on top. And you can see that, yeah, it's really riding on that novelty of having Bully Maguire brought to us in contemporary Hasbro Marvel Legends form in a proper 6-inch format. I don't know if I'm able to squeeze it in here. It's going to be able to stand up proper, but originally in 2007, this is what we had to deal with, okay? This guy right here. Yeah, that's what Hasbro gave us back in 2007. And I know that I think either the year after or maybe 2 years later, they did do some kind of like re-release where they took that middle 5.5-inch Marvel Legends, quote unquote, that was tied to Spider-Man 3 and kind of blew him up a little bit. And he was re-released, but at a higher price point. He came with like some weapon accessories. By that point, I was so burnt and focused on Transformers that I didn't really go back and pick that guy up. So giving us this guy with the Toby head, there was a little bit of potential there, but only to see that not much has changed between its original reveal and now by simply just taking the original body here, that we were able to digest a little bit simpler and easier when No Way Home was a thing, and when the context of that movie really did fit with a much older Toby, it didn't make so much sense to do it here. Hot Toys even came under fire for what alleged to be the same body that they used for the No Way Home version, then being kind of recycled for the black suited Spidey that's supposed to be lifted from Spider-Man 3. Since then, with the blogger picks, they decided to overhaul the body, beef it up a little bit. Sure, the figure in and of itself is still not perfect. I don't know what the hell's going on with those lenses, but at least they made an effort. There was evidence of some kind of effort, some kind of change. There was nothing like that here with Marvel Legends. And this is supposed to be the much more consumer-friendly option. And when your prices are going beyond the point of being consumer-friendly to the point where we're dealing with a figure that will cost you between $30 to $32 to maybe even $35 a pop, I'm literally physically choking on my words here because I frankly don't know exactly where we can go from this point. If we are going to be making those decisions, those monetary decisions as collectors, we need to be turning to some better options out there. So I think at this point, if you guys were still kind of on the fence as to whether or not to pick this guy up, I think you're probably better off waiting to see if some kind of prosumer company like Mayfix or Figuarts will finally pull the trigger on developing a black-suited Spidey from Spider-Man 3, complete with Toby head or Toby heads with different expressions and all. And if you're going to be paying that, form of money, where again that gap is getting ever so tighter and closer and smaller, jumping from something that's between $35 to almost $40 after maybe shipping and tax, depending on where you're getting him from, to then just simply importing a Mayfix or Figuarts somewhere close to about 80 or 90 short. It might even get a little worse considering the whole tariff situation, but at least you'll be dealing with a quality figure that you know is going to be a brand new, from the ground up figure that's different from a previous Marvel Legends that already had problems, and at least your nostalgia will be a little bit better rewarded. So why exactly is it that I forked over the money to make a video like this? Because I'm hoping that at least this video will not only be entertaining for some of you guys to kind of relish in my misery, but also to at least convey a message, get a message out there for those who were, like I said, still on the deciding factor. Maybe they were listening to this video, watching this video, whatever, in the background, on their way to like a GameStop or to a Target to try to track this guy down, only to then hopefully hear that you're not missing out on much should you skip him. Memory escapes me as far as when I last gave a figure this rating, but this is a 4 out of 10. This is even lesser than average, lesser than mediocre, primarily because of that price point. Maybe if it was somewhere in the 20s, between 25, 26, 27, kind of somewhere around the price point that some of the most recent mini comic figure releases like that Miles Morales or that ROM were released, then maybe we could have a bit of an argument, a bit of a dialogue. But considering that it's going over 30, and it kind of makes a statement from Hasbro saying, you know, this is black suited Spidey. You guys are nostalgic for that movie, right? So you'll give the money, right? I'll be like, you know what? I did, only because I'm a content creator. There's at least some form of ROI in the form of generating content from it. But if I wasn't a YouTuber, I would have said a big old fat you and would have made some kind of effort to part ways with this figure, if you catch my meaning. You're better off getting either some kind of custom figure, either doing it yourself via some kind of paint or acrylic or anything like that to kind of deck out this guy should you have like a secondary version, or if you're willing to pay the money for some of these accessories a la carte as far as the symbiote piece, or better yet the Bully Maguire head sculpt, then at least order that in. Like I said, add it to this guy. Or if you have like a suited figure like that J. Jonah Jameson with the suit, coated in black, swap the heads. I've already seen some people do that on Reddit, and to great effect to kind of deliver on that dancing montage scene from Spider-Man 3 that we all know and love. That's awesome, and I feel like you're probably going to have much more mileage doing something like that as opposed to just forking over the 30 to 35, maybe even $40 for just this guy and calling it there. But I'm finding it difficult to believe that I'm the only one that fell victim to nostalgia. So down in the comment section, for all of you guys that are very hardcore collectors and have been collecting for some time now, what's a figure that managed to get your hooks into you despite knowing going in with the pressing of the pre-order button or picking it up at your local collectible store? What's a figure that you saw and thought to yourself, this is very likely not going to be a great figure, or it's a very obvious repaint, but it's utilizing something as far as a color scheme, an overhaul of a head sculpt, something that kind of, like I said, touched your nostalgic heartstrings and thought to yourself, I need to have this and include it in my collection at least. If it not now, then you're probably going to have to bite the bullet even worse later because of scalping prices, increased inflation, the whole tariff situation that's happening right now. And I want to hear what you guys have to say down below to at least find a little bit of solace in my misery here. And while you guys are down there, hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this review, thumbs down if you did not, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. I'm going to go ahead and have a drink.